The alien market was loud, filled with voices, smoke, and the stench of fear. Beasts from 100 worlds were caged, some small enough to fit in a hand, others towering like monsters. But none of them drew as much attention as her, the giantess. She, set in the center of the market, chained with thick metal links that glowed red with heat. Her arms were bound to the ground, her neck locked by an iron collar. She was taller than any guard, taller than any wall. And yet, here she was reduced to nothing more than a prisoner, waiting to be sold. The traders shouted insults as they passed. "Too big to breed," one laughed. "Useless, a cursed one." Another spat. "Better to cut her for meat than waste time." The giantess kept her eyes down. She had stopped fighting days ago. Every struggle only brought more pain, more shocks. From the chains, her skin, pale with a faint silver glow, was marked with burns and bruises. She looked powerful, but her strength meant nothing here. She remembered her home world, its mountains, its forests, its skies. She had once run freely, taller than trees, stronger than storms, but her people had rejected her. They said she was unnatural. Her body was too large, her wound too dangerous. No male would take her. And so, when the raiders came, she had not been protected. She was captured and dragged across the stars. Now she sat in the filth of the market, waiting for her. And the auctioneer, a scaled alien with a cruel grin, banged his staff on the ground. "Lot 77, the giantess," he shouted. "Too large to tame, too wild to breed, but strong enough for slaughter. Who bids?" The crowd roared with laughter. Some raised their hands, not to buy, but to mock. Others whispered of her meat. How? It could feed armies. None saw her as anything more than a beast. Her heart sank. She thought of death. Perhaps it was better to be cut down than to suffer longer. And then silence. A figure walked into the circle. Not tall, not armed with heavy weapons, not covered in scales or horns. A human dot. He was plain compared to the others, small against the giantess, with nothing but worn armor and a cloak around his shoulders. Yet his eyes were sharp, steady, and fixed only on her. The crowd laughed again. What is this? A human? Here to buy meat? He can't even feed her for a day. Crush him, girl, if they let you free. But the human did not flinch. He stepped closer, past the guards, past the jeering voices. His voice was calm, clear, and strong. "I'll take her." The auctioneer blinked, confused. "You? A human? You dare bid on this thing?" "I dare," the man said. He reached into his cloak and threw a small case of credits onto the ground. The metal coins scattered, shining under the torches. Enough to silence the laughter. Crowd whispered now. Why would a human want her? What use could she be? The giantess raised her eyes for the first time. She expected to see pity or fear. Instead, she saw something else resolve. The human wasn't mocking. He wasn't afraid. He looked at her as if she was not a monster, not a curse, but something. Someone. The auctioneer licked his lips. "Very well, she's yours. But don't say I didn't warn you, human. She will kill you before the night ends." The guards stepped forward, unlocking the chains one by one. The sound of metal snapping echoed through the market. Sparks burst as the heated cuffs fell away. The giantess breathed sharply. Her body trembled as freedom touched her skin again. But she did not move. She didn't trust this. Why would anyone free her? Why risk taking a creature everyone else wanted dead? As the last chain fell, the guards stood ready with shock spears. One wrong move, and they would end her. The human stepped between them and her. He raised his hand slowly, not to strike, but to show peace. His voice was firm. "Stand, you're free now." Her lips parted, but no words came. She had been called cursed, useless, doomed. No one had ever said free to her. She rose, her massive frame towering over the human, over the guards, over the auction itself. The crowd gasped, many stepping back. For the first time she looked down at him, not with fear, but with a strange feeling she couldn't name. The auctioneer sneered. "Enjoy your death, human." The human turned his head slightly, his eyes still locked on hers. "They don't decide your fate. You do." The giantess clenched her fists. The guards tightened their grips. The crowd leaned forward, waiting for blood. Would she crush him? Would she strike him down? Or would she follow? The market held its breath, and that's when the chains finally fell completely. The chains clattered to the ground, their sound sharp like broken bells. The giantess stood, her shadow swallowing the auction stage. The crowd had gone silent, as if waiting for the first scream, the first broken bone, the first proof that freeing her was madness. But she did not strike. She only stood, staring down at the human who had spoken for her. The guards shifted nervously, their shock spears glowing with electric fire. "One wrong move, beast," one hissed, "and you die here." The giantess could feel their eyes crawling on her skin, waiting for her to lash out. But her gaze stayed fixed on the human. His calmness unsettled her. No one had ever looked at her that way. Not with disgust, not with fear, just steady, unshaken resolve. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was deep, thunderous, but trembling from weakness. "Why?" The human tilted his head. "Why not?" Her chest tightened. That answer was not what she expected. Everyone before had called her cursed, doomed, worthless. And yet, this small human answered as though her life had value without question. The auctioneer barked a laugh. "Fool! She'll crush you before morning. She is too big, too wild, too dangerous. She's not worth even the chains that held her." But the human turned, his voice cutting through the noise. "I didn't buy her for chains," the crowd murmured. Whispers rippled like snakes through grass. Some laughed, others frowned. What did he mean? The giantess lowered her head, her silver glowing eyes fixed on him. "You don't know what I am," she said, voice breaking between anger and sorrow. "My people cast me out. The raiders took me because they saw no worth but flesh. I am nothing but a curse." The human stepped closer, ignoring the guards who raised their spears. "You are alive. That is worth everything." She felt her breath catch. For a heartbeat, the noise of the market vanished. All she could hear was his voice, calm but filled with a strange power. The guards grew restless. "Enough talking. Move her before she tears the place apart." The human looked at them, his expression hard. "Touch her, and you'll answer." "To me," laughter burst from the crowd. A human threatening trained guards of the market? Ridiculous. Yet the guards hesitated. Something in his eyes, in the way he stood, told them he wasn't bluffing. The auctioneer waved his staff. "Take her, human. She is your burden now. But when she kills you, don't come crying to us." The giantess studied the man as he gestured for her to step down from the platform. Her legs shook from weakness, but she followed, chains dragging behind her like dead serpents. The crowd parted as they walked, jeers and curses chasing them. Some shouted that he was insane. Others placed bets on how quickly she would break him in half. Once outside the auction circle, the air felt cooler, though heavy with smoke and dust. The giantess leaned against a broken pillar, her voice low. "You are small, fragile. One strike from me and you would shatter. Why risk yourself for me?" The human met her eyes without flinching. "Because you've been treated like an animal. And I don't see an animal." Her throat tightened. She wanted to laugh, to rage, to cry, but no sound came. She had no answer for this human's strange courage. Then, suddenly, a sharp noise cut through the street, the shrill call of a horn. The giantess snapped her head toward the sound. The hunters were coming. Market law was clear. If a buyer could not control their purchase, the guards had the right to kill it on the spot. Dozens of armored enforcers poured into the alley. weapons glowing, nets sparking with energy. Their leader pointed at the giantess. "Kill it before it escapes." The human stepped in front of her, cloak whipping in the rising wind. His voice was steel. "She is under my protection." The leader sneered, "Then you will die with her." The giantess clenched her fists, her heart pounding. She was weak, half-starved, still aching from her chains. The human was small, fragile, one man against many, and yet he did not move. He stood as if the whole galaxy could come for him, and he would not back down. The giantess stared at him. Her breath caught between fear and something she had not felt in years' hope. The guards charged, weapons raised, the alley flashing with fire and light. The human whispered, just loud enough for her to hear, "Stay behind me." The clash was about to begin. The clash was chaos. Sparks and smoke filled the narrow alley as guards struck with shock spears. The human moved like he had done this before. He didn't fight with brute force, he fought with timing. Every step, every strike was sharp and deliberate. The giantess tried to rise, but her body was still weak from chains. She swung one arm, knocking two guards into the wall. But pain burned through her muscles, reminding her she was not yet free of her suffering. The human tossed a small device on the ground. With a hiss, it exploded into a cloud of smoke, blinding the guards. "Move!" he shouted. The giantess stumbled forward, her heavy steps shaking the ground. She followed him through the twisting streets, her massive frame crashing through stalls and fences as the crowd screamed. Behind them, the horn blared again. More hunters would come. They ran until the market noise faded, replaced by the cold howl of the open desert. The waste stretched endless, a barren sea of rock and sand glowing under two suns. Strange bones jutted from the ground, relics of creatures long dead. The air shimmered with heat, carrying the scent of dust and salt. The human stopped at a ridge, scanning the horizon. His chest rose and fell, but his eyes stayed sharp. "We bought a few minutes, no more." The giantess collapsed to her knees, gasping for breath. Her chains still hung heavy from her wrists, dragging marks in the sand. Why do you run for me? You could leave, you would live." The human looked back at her, his voice steady. "Because you deserve to live too." Her heart pounded at his words. No one had ever said that to her. Not her own people, not the raiders, not the traitors. This human spoke as if it was fact, not a gift. Before she could answer, a low growl rose from the ground. The sand shifted, swirling into a spiral. The human cursed under his breath. "Vorms." The ground split open as a colossal sandworm erupted. Its jaws lined with glowing fangs, its body armored in scales as hard as stone. It screeched, the sound echoing across the wastes. The giantess staggered back, but the human didn't run. Instead, he pulled a small sphere from his belt and slammed it into the ground. A pulse of light burst out, disorienting the creature for a moment. "Get up," he told her. "We have to move." She struggled, but forced herself to stand. Her legs shook, but each step grew steadier. She clenched her fists, fury burning in her veins, not at the worm, but at her own weakness. The worm struck, slamming into the ground where she had stood seconds before. Sand exploded into the air. The human rolled aside, pulling her with surprising strength for someone so small. They ran across the dunes, the worm chasing, tearing the earth apart behind them. Every time it lunged, the human threw something, flashes, tricks to distract it. His mind was sharp, faster than its hunger. The giantess began to see what made him different. Not his size, not his weapons, it was his will. His refusal to back down. At the edge of the dunes, jagged cliffs rose like teeth. The human led her toward them. "If we reach the rocks, it can't follow." But the worm was faster. It surged beneath them, bursting out of the sand in front of their path. Its shadow swallowed the human whole. The giantess felt her chest burn with rage. She would not let this small human, this strange, fearless creature be swallowed. With a roar, she lifted one of her broken chains, wrapping it around her fist. As the worm lunged, she slammed her chained hand across its jaw. The impact cracked its scales, sending it reeling back into the sands with a thunderous crash. Silence fell. Dust drifted in the air. The worm did not rise again. The giantess fell, to her knees gasping. Her body shook, but for the first time, she felt strength returning. She looked at the human, who stood with dust on his cloak and fire in his eyes. "You fought," he said, almost smiling. "Even weakened, you fought." She met his gaze. "Because you stood." But before relief could settle, the sky darkened. Shadows swept over the cliffs as ships descended, sleek and black. The hunters had followed. The human's jaw tightened. "They won't stop." The giantess rose slowly, her breath heavy, her chain still dripping sand. For the first time she did not feel doomed. She felt a fire awakening inside her dot, and as the ships lowered their cannons, she realized her fight was only beginning. The Fofa. Hunter ships screamed overhead, their engines shaking the cliffs. Dust and stone rained down as the giantess and the human stood side by side. From the ships, armored soldiers dropped on cables, dozens of them, armed with plasma rifles and shot blades. The giantess clenched her fists. She had faced armies before, but never with chains still dragging from her wrists. She looked at the human, her voice low and uncertain. "You cannot fight them all, not alone. Not with me slowing you." The human's eyes locked on hers. "Then don't slow me. Fight with me." Her chest tightened. Trust him? A fragile creature barely reaching her waist? Yet, something inside her said she should. The first wave of hunters charged. Plasma fire lit the cliffs, sparks bouncing off stone. The human dove for cover, rolling behind a boulder. From there, he pulled a small device and hurled it into the soldier's path. It burst into a blinding flash, dropping 3 of them to their knees. "Now!" he shouted. The giantess roared, ripping one of her chains free from the rock. She swung it like a whip, the glowing links smashing into soldiers and scattering them like leaves in a storm. The earth shook with her fury. The human moved quick, striking where her blows left openings. He was precise, his blade finding weak joints in armor, his explosives turning the terrain itself into a weapon. Still, the enemy pressed harder. More. Ships descended, more soldiers pouring out. One hunter slipped past the giantess and lunged at the human. She turned too late, but the human was faster. He ducked, drove his blade under the alien's armor, and dropped him with a twist. Giantess stared, stunned. This human was no ordinary wanderer. He fought like a soldier who had lost too much to ever back down. Her group surrounded her, firing into her chest and arms. She staggered, pain burning her skin. For a moment, fear whispered in her mind. If I fall, he dies too. And then his voice cut through the fire. Stand tall. Don't let them break you. Her heart surged. She lifted her chain and slammed it into the ground, the impact sending a shockwave through the sand. The hunters tumbled like broken dolls. For the first time since her capture, she felt power, not the cursed size her people despised, but strength that could protect. But the battle was far from won. A hunter captain stepped forward, towering even above his soldiers, clad in black armor with glowing red blades. His voice boomed. "Human, you dare claim the cursed giantess? You'll die as she was meant to alone." The giantess stepped forward, shielding the human with her body. "He is mine to protect." The captain laughed. "You protect a human? You are nothing but failed flesh," he charged. The giantess swung her chain, but the captain caught it, yanking her off balance. With brutal strength, he drove her to her knees. The human didn't hesitate. He climbed the captain's back, jamming a charge into the joints of his armor. With a roar, The explosion ripped through metal, staggering the alien. The giantess seized the chance. With both hands, she grabbed the captain and hurled him into the cliffside. Stone cracked as his armor shattered. The battlefield went silent for a moment. The hunters froze, stunned that their captain had fallen. The human breathed hard dust on his face, but his eyes never wavered. He looked up at her. See, together. Her chest heaved, blood and dust on her skin, but something deeper stirred. Trust. He had stood when no one else would. And when she faltered, he had saved her, not as a master, not as a captor, but as a partner. But victory was short. Above them, the largest ship began to lower, its shadow swallowing the cliffs. Its cannon glowed with deadly light. The human's face hardened. That's not a troop carrier. That's an executioner. The giantess clenched her fists. Her strength was returning, but her body still trembled. Could they survive this? The cannon whined, charging for a single devastating shot. The human turned to her, voice calm even in the storm. Trust me one more time. She swallowed hard, her eyes burning with fire. For the first time in her life, she whispered, I do. The sky lit up as the cannon fired. The blast split the sky. The executioner's cannon ripped into the cliffs, stone and fire raining like a storm. The ground shook so hard the giantess thought the whole world was breaking apart. But the human had moved. Before the shot landed, he had dragged her into a crack between the rocks, shielded her with his own body as the mountain itself took the cannon's fury. When the dust settled, silence fell. The ship hovered overhead, its cannon cooling, but the hunters did not fire again, for now they were gone. Perhaps they thought the blast had finished the job. The giantess coughed, her chest aching. She looked down and froze. The human lay slumped against her arm. His armor cracked, blood dark on his side. Her breath caught. She had seen countless soldiers fall in battle, even giants stronger than her. But this small human, who had no reason to stand beside her, had nearly died shielding her. She lifted him carefully, her massive hands trembling. Why? She whispered, Why do this for me? His eyes flickered open, tired but still steady. He gave a faint, crooked smile. Because I know what it's like to be cast aside. Her lips parted, but no words came. He coughed, blood staining his cloak. His voice was weak, but his words carried weight. My colony was attacked. The giants that came said we were too weak to survive. They left us burning. My family gone, all because we weren't worth keeping alive. The giantess froze. Her own people had done this, or others like them. Her chest tightened, a storm of anger and shame burning through her. The human continued, his voice a whisper. I swore I wouldn't let it happen again, not to anyone. Not even someone the galaxy calls cursed. The giantess's throat ached. She had been hated for her size, her body, her so-called curse. She had been told she was nothing. And yet, here was a man broken and bleeding, telling her she was worth saving. She lowered her head close to him, her silver eyes glowing softly. You should hate me, hate my kind. Why save me? His eyes met hers, unflinching. Because you're not them, you're you. Her chest shook. For a moment, she forgot the dust, the blood, the danger. For a moment, there was only his voice, steady even in pain. But before she could answer, the sky rumbled again. The executioner ship turned, preparing another strike. The giantess gritted her teeth. This time, she would not hide. She rose to her full height, the human cradled carefully in her hand. Her strength was returning slow, but burning like fire through her veins. The ship's loudspeakers boomed across the cliffs. Deliver the giantess, or die where you stand. The giantess's eyes narrowed. For the first time, she felt no shame in her sighs, no fear in her curse. For the first time, she wanted to fight not for herself, but for the fragile human who had fought for her. She set him down gently in the shadow of the rocks. His hand caught her wrist, weak but firm. "You can't fight them all," he whispered. Her lips curved into a faint, dangerous smile. "Then watch me try." The ship lowered, soldiers pouring out once again. The ground shook under their march. The human tried to rise, but his body failed him. All he could do was watch as the giantess stepped forward, chains dragging behind her like weapons of war. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel doomed. She felt alive. She felt chosen not by her cursed people, not by destiny, but by the single human who had seen her as more than a monster. And as the soldiers raised their weapons, she lifted her broken chains and roared, her voice echoing across the wastes. The battle was not over. It was only beginning. The cliffs trembled as the hunters advanced, their war cries echoing through the wastes. From the sky, the executioner ship loomed lower, its black hull blotting out the suns. The giantess stood tall, chains wrapped around her fists like weapons forged from her own suffering. Her silver glowing eyes burned with defiance. For the first time, she was not running, not hiding. She was ready to fight. The human, still wounded, leaned against the rocks, forcing his voice to carry. "Listen to me. They'll come in waves. If you charge blindly, they'll swarm you. But if we fight smart, we have a chance." She looked down at him, towering above, yet hearing the steel in his words. She gave a small nod. "Then guide me, human, and I will break them." The first wave of hunters stormed forward, blades flashing. The human shouted, "Left flank now." The giantess swung her chain wide, smashing the ground. The impact sent dust and stone exploding upward, blinding the soldiers. She used the opening to seize 3 of them and hurl them into their comrades. Second wave fired plasma bolts. The human hurled a smoke bomb, cutting their sight. Through the cover straight line. The giantess obeyed. Her massive body charged through the smoke, her chain crashing down like thunder. Screams filled the air as armor shattered and weapons clattered to the ground. The hunters began to falter. They had expected a beast, not a fighter working in perfect rhythm with a human. But then, the executioner ship opened its bay doors. From within stepped something larger, giants in black armor, towering even over her. Her breath caught. They were her own kind. But twisted, bred for war, loyal only to their masters. Her heart clenched. These were not enemies she could see as strangers. These were what she could have become if her curse had been embraced by cruelty instead of rejected. The lead armored giant spoke, his voice hollow through the helmet. "Traitor to your kind, you will kneel or you will die." The human's voice cut sharp across the battlefield. "Don't listen. They see you as a tool, nothing more. Prove them wrong." The giantess roared, charging to meet them. Her chain clashed with their blades, sparks lighting the air. Each strike shook the ground. The hunters watched in awe. One woman, cursed and chained, holding back armored titans. But the giants pressed hard. One slammed a fist into her chest, sending her sprawling. Another pinned her arm, blade raised to finish her. "Now!" The human shouted. She twisted, rolling just enough for his thrown charge to land on the giant's armor. The explosion tore the enemy back, freeing her. She surged up, her chain swinging with brutal force, crushing another giant into the rocks. Sweat dripped from the human's brow as he set another trap, planting mines along the battlefield. Each time she drove the enemy into them, the ground erupted in fire and screams. Together, they cut down wave after wave until only the lead armored giant remained. He was larger, stronger, his armor glowing red. He tore the chain from her hands and slammed her into the ground. Dust filled her mouth, blood burning in her throat. The human tried to run forward, but his wound slowed him. The armored giant kicked him aside like a rag doll, leaving him gasping in the dirt. The lead giant raised his blade, pressing it against her throat. "You are nothing but broken flesh. And now you die." The giantess stared up at him, rage boiling inside her. For so long she had believed those words. Broken, cursed, doomed. But not anymore. Not with the human's eyes watching her from the dirt, refusing to give up on her. Her hand shot up, grabbing the blade. Plasma seared her skin, but she held firm. With a roar that split the air, she wrenched the weapon aside, then drove her forehead into the giant's helmet. The crack of metal rang out like thunder. He staggered. She seized her broken chain, wrapped it around his neck, and pulled with every ounce of strength she had left. His armor cracked. His body fell. Silence. The battlefield still dot the hunters. Seeing their champions fall, began to retreat. The executioner ship rumbled, preparing to fire its cannon again. The human staggered to her side, his face pale but his eyes burning. We can't win against that cannon. We need a plan. She looked down at him, her bloodied hands shaking, her body torn but unbroken. For the first time, she smiled not with bitterness, but with fire. Then we take the fight to the sky. The human's eyes widened. You mean the ship? Her gaze rose to the massive warship looming above. Chains dangled from her wrists, still glowing with heat. She clenched them tight. Double quotes, yes, we end it there. Above them, the ship's cannon began to glow, light brighter than the sun's. The final battle was about to begin. The executioner ship loomed above, its cannon glowing like a false sun. The ground itself seemed to tremble under its power. The giantess lifted her head, silver eyes burning with fire. The human, bloodied but unbroken, stood at her side. She clenched her chains. No more running. The human nodded, jaw tight. Then we climb. The ship began to descend, dust storms swirling under its engines. Soldiers leaned over its edge, ready to rain death. But the giantess charged, her heavy steps shaking the cliffs. With a roar, she hurled her broken chain upward, the glowing links hooking into the ship's armor. She pulled. Stone shattered beneath her feet, but the chain held. The ship lurched, metal groaning as she began to climb. The human clung to her shoulder, planting charges as they rose. Plasma fire rained down, but she shielded him with her body, her skin burning, yet she did not stop. Every wound, every scar, every ounce of pain became fuel. At last, they reached the ship's side. With a mighty heave, she tore open a panel of armor and climbed inside. The corridors glowed red, alarms screaming. Soldiers rushed them, but the human moved fast, his blade flashing, his explosives turning narrow halls into traps. The giantess crushed through bulkheads, her fists and chains smashing everything in her way. Together, they carved a path toward the heart of the ship, the cannon core. But waiting for them was the warlord, taller than any soldier, clad in black and crimson armor, his face hidden behind a mask of bone. His voice echoed like thunder. You think you've won, cursed one? You are nothing. He is nothing. I will burn you both from existence. The giantess stepped forward, her chains dripping blood and fire. No, you will not decide my fate anymore. The battle shook the ship itself. The warlord's blade struck like lightning, his strength nearly matching hers. She staggered under his blows, but each time she fell, she rose again. The human fought beside her, striking weak points, planting charges, forcing the warlord to split his focus. Still, the warlord was relentless. With a brutal strike, he hurled the human across the chamber, slamming him into a wall. He collapsed, gasping, blood staining the floor. The giantess froze. For a heartbeat, fear stabbed through her heart. She had lost everything before: family, home, pride. She could not lose him too. The warlord raised his blade for the final strike. Die with your pet, cursed one. Her roar shook the chamber. She seized the warlord's arm, forcing the blade aside. With her other hand, she wrapped her chain around his torso. Sparks flew as she pulled with all her might. The human, barely able to move, reached into his cloak. His last charge. His voice was hoarse but strong. Now she understood. In one motion, she hurled the warlord into the cannon core. The human hurled the charge after him. The explosion was blinding. Fire swallowed the chamber, ripping through the ship's heart. The cannon shattered, the engine screamed, the hull tore apart. The giantess shielded the human with her body as the ship broke open, hurling them into the open sky. They crashed into the sands below as the executioner burned, its wreckage falling like dying stars to silence. Then wind, dust, and the faint sound of her breathing. The giantess rose slowly, her body battered, her chains broken at last. She looked down at the human in her arms. His eyes opened weakly, a faint smile on his bloodied face. "You're still alive," she whispered, her voice shaking. He smirked faintly. "Told you. We'd make it." Her eyes burned, but not with shame. With pride. For the first time, she was not cursed. She was not doomed. She was chosen by her own will, and by the human who had fought for her when no one else dared. She stood tall, the wreckage of the enemy burning behind her, the dawn rising over the wastes. She lifted the human close to her chest, her voice soft but firm. "No chains, no doom, not anymore. From now on, we fight together." And for the first time, she believed it.